Okay, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. The channel has now passed 770 subscribers. It did so earlier in the week, but I thought I'll wait until we've gone a bit past 770 to go. This is the special live stream. We only had the 700 subscriber live stream a couple of weeks ago, so the growth on the channel for the channel size has been pretty good. Now, lots of stuff happening in sports news. We've got the FA Cup fourth round this weekend. I'll be watching several games live on the internet to then do reviews on. I won't be able to watch as many games as I would like, but we've got the FA Cup fourth round. Can crowd numbers go up this round rather than down? That'd be interesting, and we'll see. Let's see what kind of upsets happen and banana skins. I mean, Brentford play Leicester City at 12:45. That's the first game of the day. And that's the game I'll be watching. So let's see if Jamie Vardy's fit enough. Let's see if Brentford can pull off a cup shock, considering that Leicester have won all three previous meetings in the club's history. So Brentford have never won a game against Leicester, and Leicester have won all three previous meetings. That's an interesting one. There could be an upset there. Brentford are the home team at Griffin Park. Rugby union news. Obviously, the Saracens' aftermath is still ongoing. And we're not sure what other players are going to say they're moving on at the end of the season. We know that Liam Williams and George Cruz are leaving the club. We don't know what's going to happen with Itoje, Farrell, and the Vunipolas. And Wigglesworth, are they staying? Are they going? The fact that these players were also involved in helping breach the salary cap with, secret payments or money's just sitting in my account was the excuse. It's just sitting there in my account. I'm just holding it. These players were actually actively involved in the salary cap breach. So when people say they feel sorry for the players at Saracens, I don't. They were fully aware of what they were doing in order to circumvent the cap that was in place. The Finn Russell situation with Scotland, he's been sent home from the squad and kicked out of the squad in disgrace over late night drinking antics from last weekend, and then failures to report to training on time or at all. And it's a massive breach of team discipline. This is posing a conundrum, obviously, for Gregor Townsend. Does he play Weir at 10, even though he's been tried at 10 before, Hastings or Horn? So there's a fly half crisis now with Scotland. Could this be the issue that actually makes or breaks Gregor Townsend's time in charge as coach? Could this make or break their Six Nations campaign before it even starts? This is not the first time we've seen players sent home from squads due to late night drinking antics, not just in rugby, in all sport. And I've really got to discuss substance abuse in sport, I think, more often. But the timeline of events between Finn Russell and Gregor Townsend dates back to the last Six Nations. There's apparently been like a breakdown in the relationship between the player and the coach. It's been an ongoing issue where they don't particularly talk or respect each other. Could this explain why Scotland was so poor at the World Cup, for example, where they failed to get out the pool stage? They were actually really underperforming, didn't play very well, and quite frankly, just were not good enough at the end of last year. Could this be part of the reason why? But it's a headache that Gregor Townsend doesn't need. He's the coach for me under the most pressure. If Scotland really struggle at the Six Nations, let's say they get the wooden spoon. Let's say they lose all five games, or they finish bottom of the table or near the bottom. Is that Gregor Townsend's job gone? Is he out of a job? These are questions that I think need to be answered, because the Scottish rugby chairman has just got £1 million bonus, considering that the team has had a poor Six Nations last year, a poor World Cup, and is now their star player. One of their star players has been sent home in disgrace. Yet the CEO of Scottish Rugby has just got £1 million bonus. That's another debating point. Is the money going into the right place? So a lot of questions there with the Scottish situation. In cricket, England are the first team to reach 500,000 runs. They've scored 500,000 test runs, although that's not surprising as they're the oldest test nation going. Just putting it out there, but they have reached 500,000 runs. They are the first nation to do so. Little milestone, as they're in the last test against South Africa, a series that England start to dominate. So that's not really making the headlines over here. Not really making the headlines it should. Again, we can debate the TV rights, the media rights with cricket, and should there be a highlights package on the TV, free to air? Should there be split rights between subscription TV and free to air TV? We can debate that at length. Obviously, the NHL All-Star Game, there was the Women's All-Star Game as well at the NHL 3-on-3. And they're saying, that's a big thing, having an all-female section of the All-Star Weekend. And that's massive progress in that sport. But we're debating we've been debating the pros and cons of the All-Star Weekend on this channel for a little while. I've been asked the question a lot by viewers about my views on the current All-Star format for the NHL, where star players like Ovechkin and Dylan Larkin have said they don't want to go, and Ovechkin being selected for the All-Star Weekend saying, no, I'm not going for the second year in a row, I'll take the suspension. That says to me that not all is well within the playing group of the NHLPA. And with a collective bargaining agreement coming up at some point, we know they've decided to not go on strike or have a lockout at this point. Seattle is joining the league, but there is going to have to be at some point in the next couple of years be a brand new collective bargaining agreement, a CBA, or an extension of what is already there, or a reworking of what's already there. The All-Star Weekend, should they move it to a different time of the season? Do they change the format? Questions will be asked about that if high-ranking, high-profile players don't want to go. Olympic participation, all these kind of things will be on the NHLPA paperwork, the discussion with the NHL. They're going to be pushing these issues, however minor or major, when we come to a collective bargaining agreement. I've also been asked why London doesn't have an NFL team. It's economics. It is economics. In some states in the US, you pay no income tax, and your property taxes are very low. If an NFL team was to be moved to London, taxes for the high earners are over 50%. Property taxes are quite high. Stamp duty, and then there's a whole host of other things. You have to be it complicates the residency issue, where you pay your tax. And of course, the salaries in the NFL paid in US dollars, not British pounds, and the dollar to the pound has fluctuated recently. There's a whole host of economics. And they did ask an NBA CEO from the Boston Celtics a couple of years ago when the Boston Celtics were playing a game at the O2 about the possibility or the likelihood of a North American franchise league post putting a franchise anywhere in Europe, because the NHL could go anywhere in, let's say, Germany or Czech Republic or Switzerland, or the NFL having a team in London, or the NBA having a team in Spain, anywhere in Europe. And he said, it's not going to happen. We're the most profitable league. It's not going to happen. There are economics. But that's the simple answer to that question. But people have been asking, should we have an NFL team in London? If the NBA, a rival league that makes huge sums of money, is saying it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. It really isn't. You got to think of the TV timings as well, the start of the matches for the US audience. You've got to think there will have to be an owners' meeting to vote, and it have to be a 2/3 majority either way to get a decision to go or not to go. There would have to be the NFLPA would also have to sign off. That's the players' union, because players would have to move across the world. A whole host of issues would and hurdles would have to be crossed. The fact that there isn't actually a stadium that the NFL has a full-time lease on. Yes, they have an agreement with Tottenham, with White Hart Lane, for 2 games a year. They have an agreement now with Wembley for 2 games a year. They have used Twickenham as well while White Hart Lane was being rebuilt. So they've had agreements with stadiums for a limited period of time per year. You need to have 8 home games per year to call it your home city. And at the moment, they only have a 4-game agreement with the stadiums in London. So they would have to rearrange that agreement, bearing in mind these stadiums are also used by the English national soccer or football team. White Hart Lane is used by Tottenham. Wembley is also used by Rugby Union and Rugby League as well at various points throughout the year. So we've got a Rugby League World Cup coming up next year. At the time the NFL is on, it's not going to happen before 2021. Wembley is going to be used by the Rugby League World Cup. There's a clash there, and they're not going to rearrange that. White Hart Lane, Tottenham, depending on how successful their season is, if they've got European football or how far they go in the FA Cup, for example, they're going to have to use White Hart Lane a lot. So that leaves you Twickenham. But when the NFL season's on, you've got the Autumn Internationals. So again, that they have to think about what stadium can they actually use as a permanent home ground for 8 games. It's not going to happen. The biggest stadiums in London have regular use at this time of the year. So this is where it poses problems for the NFL putting a team in London, is the stadiums they want to use have also got other teams and other leagues using them. And that poses an issue. Sahih Khan failed to buy Wembley. He couldn't get the public on side. The reaction was wholly negative, bearing in mind the British taxpayer did pump some money into the building of that stadium, and the FA undervalued the stadium by 50%. It wasn't going to end well. And the FA is already an organisation under a lot of pressure in the dealing with a whole host of issues, which we have mentioned in previous live streams, the questions that come in. The FA has been under a lot of pressure since the channel started. I've covered some of the FA scandals to do with racism, homophobia, abuse, sexual harassment, bullying, transparency, betting rights, declining crowd numbers at the FA Cup and League Cup, where crowd numbers are just non-existent at some games. A whole host of issues that the FA has to, be involved with. The FA has been brought before a government and parliamentary select committee of media, culture and sport, and has proven and been told you are not fit for purpose as it currently is. Your systems are not fit for purpose. So when the attempt to sell Wembley came along, there was ministerial involvement. The press had a field day. The public, whenever they were surveyed, were mostly against selling the stadium, considering it took so long and so much to rebuild. It didn't go down well. I can't see the NFL plonking a team in London somehow. Major League Baseball, we discussed why it took so long for Major League Baseball to have a series in London or have games over here in Europe, considering that the other major North American leagues have been doing it for generations and years. In the modern era, at least, the NBA, the NHL, and the NFL have been doing it for the last 25 years onwards. I mean, the NBA, I think, have been the most consistent organisation for bringing games to Europe since the 90s. The NFL and NHL do it as well, though the NHL first came to Europe in the 1930s. It's been a consistent playing, even if it's exhibition matches in pre-season or actual regular season games. The Major League Baseball has taken too long to get a foothold in that market, in that sports market, and they are lagging well behind in developing baseball as a sport in Europe. If you look at the popular sports in Europe, baseball is not one of them. Are there fans over here? Yes. Are there fans over here of all the Major League? Yes. Yes, there are. But Major League Baseball, unfortunately, hasn't really touched on the European market. Hasn't touched at all. Whereas predominantly European sports have taken pre-season games to the US. Rugby union's done it. Rugby league's done it. They've played friendlies, pre-season friendlies, football or soccer over in America. They've done it. It's when La Liga tried to take regular season games over there that fans finally said enough's enough. It's not happening, and the players actually agreed with them and said, "No, we're not doing this." For once, the players taking the moral high ground. Wow. And they could have got a payday, and they said, "No, we're not doing it. We're going to go on strike." La Liga being similar to the Premier League in the sense that it's not directly under the Spanish FA's control, but the Spanish FA waded in and said, "No, you're not doing it." La Liga were determined to do so. In the end, it didn't happen. This is the danger that we've been facing with our domestic competitions being sold abroad to the highest bidder. I think it devalues what the hardcore fans are all about. It devalues the fan base. And when we're debating declining crowds at the FA Cup third round a couple of weeks ago, we got the FA Cup fourth round this weekend, declining crowd numbers and fans staying away or fans feeling priced out. It's been a thing that's been going on for 25 years. And this is the issue with the subscription sports mantra. As we were told ticket prices would stay low, and they haven't. They've gone the other way. Ticket prices have increased quicker than inflation. Especially in the last 10 years, how can sports teams, especially football teams, justify making hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds, dollars, euros, Swiss francs, whatever currency they use? They've made billions. The average salary has not grown. I'm a public sector worker, so technically, I'm a public sector worker under subcontract. So we had to fight for our pay rise. We had to fight for it. We were lucky to get the two pay rises we're having one in November and one in April. We are lucky to get those pay rises. We had to fight for them. Football players, all they got to do is get their agent to go, my client's worth this much, or he leaves. Oh, he's a key player for the team. Yeah, we'll pay him. The Premier League could let us in for free. They could let us in for free. All the Premier League clubs, apart from a few, could let us in for free or for less than a tenner and still make massive profits. Massive profits. They choose not to. They choose to milk the fan base dry because the players are demanding. But less and less people are buying these TV subscription packages. So that's why they keep going up in price. People are going, no, I've had enough of this. I'm not paying for it. Why am I paying for a product that's full of adverts? Because the subscription package itself is not enough for Sky or BT to make the money they need because they haven't got the viewership. They have to put the ad revenue in there because their business model is flawed. And when we see live sport and free-to-air TV, the viewership figures are so much higher. Yet we're told that the Six Nations TV rights are up for negotiation, may go to Sky because of CVC. And fans have wholly come out and said, hands off, don't touch it. Don't touch it. You'll damage the sport, don't touch it. Look at golf, look at cricket. Golf especially. Golf is a sport that no one really talks about anymore. I mean, for all Tiger Woods' off green antics, as we'll call it, or off the course antics, golf is not on free-to-air TV anymore. Really. Viewership of golf has massively declined, and the golfing authorities are under a lot of pressure to explain why they took the quick buck, and long term, less people are playing, less people are watching, both on TV and actually going to ranking events to watch as audience. Less kids are picking up the sport to play. Golf is a sport in decline. They chose the satellite TV money over having joint rights with free-to-air satellite TV. They chose to follow just pure greed, and it's killing the sport. And this is a debate that's been going on about the future of sports media rights. It continually goes on. Continually. It doesn't go away. Sports media rights are continually up for discussion. When a sport goes solely to subscription only, you find that the quality of play declines. Less people are interested because it's less accessible. It is what it is. And then we go back to the Saracens situation, right? We go all the way back to Saracens and the salary cap breach. Club rugby union, for the most part. There are games that are on free-to-air TV, but for the most part, it is on subscription TV. There are some club games on free-to-air. That is an improvement. Hasn't always been the case the last decade or so. A private equity firm called CVC has bought a fair stake in Gallagher Premiership Rugby and the Pro 14. Bought a big, sizable stake in 2 of the 3 top European leagues. It also wants to buy a bigger stake in the Six Nations. It wants to put the rights solely onto Sky, BT. Now, they also used to have rights into F1, and a former F1 executive was like, CVC put hardly any money into the sport, took as much money as they could out, avoid them. His words. They're a private equity firm. They don't care about the grassroots of a sport. They care about making money. They're asset strippers. That's all they want. They want money. This is part of the problem. What we've seen with the salary cap breach by Saracens and the sustained breaches they had over a lengthy period of time. This wasn't just something that happened overnight. This was over consecutive years. Is greed. Pure greed. And when everyone says, I feel sorry for the players, those players that have been named and shamed were actively involved in breaching the cap. They were actively involved in circumventing and breaking the rules. These are not thick people. These are well educated people who've got university degrees and college A levels and just they are well educated men. These aren't, lads from the local council state who've been sighted playing football, been signed up by a football academy and haven't done well at school. These are well educated individuals who, if they weren't rugby players, would be accountants and chartered surveyors and working in offices at mid-ranking management roles. They would have degrees in business management. These are well-educated, fortunate, but well-educated individuals who were knowing full well what they were doing. Full well. And there were some dodgy dealings there to move money around to make it look like it wasn't a breach of the salary cap when it was. But Premier League Rugby is also under the spotlight for not fully releasing the report in full and transparently as well. So the whole situation of governance of the game, the situation with Saracens, what the effects will be on England and other nations as well for release of players and players being arrested because all these dead rubbers, and the long-term future and stability financially and the governance-wise of the game, both domestically and at test level, is up in the air. We've seen World Rugby's attempts to try and restructure the international calendar. Didn't go very well. Didn't go well at all. CVC, well, guess what? Involved again. CVC, this private equity firm, wants to buy a lot of rugby union, a lot of rights into it, a lot of shares into it. It's troubling. It's a private equity firm. These ain't people who are interested in the grassroots. They're interested in making money. Rugby union and its authorities, be it at domestic, national level or international level at World Rugby, need to be very, very careful the direction they take, because it's what's shown with Saracens is the governance of the sport is amateur. The players may be professional, the clubs may be professional, but the governance and transparency of the sport is still stuck in the amateur days. There is no professionalism that I can see with the governance. There's a lack of transparency. There's a lack of clarity. They keep yo-yoing on and fiddling with the rules. There needs to be more transparency and logical thinking behind the rulemaking and the governance, because it's poor. Rugby risks turning into football. It risks turning into the scandal that was FIFA, the scandal that was Michel Platini taking dodgy payments from Sepp Blatter and UEFA. The lack of trust that fans have in the governing bodies of football. The fact that the corruption scandal in football is more than just dodgy backhanders and giving Qatar the World Cup. I mean, we've got match-fixing scandals that are ongoing. We've got clubs where there's severe corruption involved. And it's an ongoing issue that's been happening for years in football. Corruption. Cricket. One of the most corrupt sports you'll find. Oh, look, the TV rights are all on subscription now. They're losing fans, they're losing money. Let's make the 100 a format, which no one wants apart from the ECB. The goal is to gain new fans. You've just pissed off every other fan that's left. Well done. Cricket's gone the same way as football. It chased the money, it got greedy. Rugby league struggling financially. The club game, apart from the Challenge Cup, subscription TV in this country. In Australia, it's split rights. You've got split rights in Australia between subscription and free to air, and you can choose what if you want to watch it on Fox or you want to watch it on Channel 9. You can choose. The game is financially better off in Australia. Still not perfect. The NRL, there are still clubs struggling to break even. There are massive, massive money issues in rugby league. You look at the TV rights, look at the crowd numbers. They're not great. Not great at all. And the Champions League and Europa League football, one of the only club competitions apart from the FA Cup that was on free to air or mixed rights, and they took that away from us as well. And even Sky were bitterly disappointed they lost out on that, and ITV. They had a great thing going, and it was been going very successfully for many years, and you didn't need to change anything. They got it right, broadcast wise. They split the rights quite successfully. Fans were happy with that. They put it on BT Sport. Fans not happy with that. All you get is the Europa League and UEFA and Champions League finals on YouTube, free to air. It's not good enough. Not good enough. But UEFA, again, chasing the money. When sports chase the money, you'll find that the viewership goes down. But the players are demanding obscene salaries. Player agents aren't transparent, and they get some obscene money as well. And what else can you say? Now, back onto the FA Cup, fourth round. I'm very keen to see what the crowd numbers are like. If there's empty seats at Brentford Leicester, which is the 12:45 kickoff, I'll be deeply concerned. Absolutely. If there are empty seats at Brentford Leicester, I'll be deeply concerned. Because, firstly, Griffin Park is not the biggest ground in London. Brentford have got a great history in the FA Cup of pulling off a few cup shots. Leicester are actually playing rather well this season, and one of the best teams in the country. And they need a good cup run. They've got the squad to win silverware. If there are empty seats there, I fear for the FA Cup going forward long term, much like I fear for the Challenge Cup as well in rugby league, the rugby league equivalent. What came out of the third round were crowd numbers were down on last year, which were then ironically down on the year before. So there's been a downward trend in crowd numbers in the FA Cup for consecutive seasons. And questions have to be asked about why. Is it ticket price? Is it ticket price? Is it because it's a knockout competition and you can't be sure, 2-3 weeks down the line? Is it ticket price? That is a massive thing. Is it the price of tickets? Is it kickoff time? Because we've got the 3 p.m. blackout media, so we can't watch any of the 3 o'clock games in this country live free to air, which I think again is a ludicrous rule, but that's the FA for you. That's the deal they cut with the Premier League and the FA and the Football League back in 1992 was the media blackout for 3 o'clock games. They continue with that agreement. We're not the only country that also has that agreement as well with domestic leagues. It happens globally. The media blackouts for certain time slots. That's to encourage as many fans as possible to go to games, which is not happening. Didn't happen in the last FA Cup round. Loads of fans stayed away. I'm just going to point out Cardiff Carlisle in a stadium that can seat around 30,000. If only 5,500 are turning up, you've got a problem with selling this product. So questions will be asked, but I'm looking forward to actually seeing what football is played. We know Leicester like the nice counter attack. We know Brentford are going to be throwing the kitchen sink at it as well. They're at home. Leicester have a poor record against lower league opposition in the cup. Although Brendan Rodgers has a decent record as a manager, Leicester as a club have gone out to lower league opposition several times now in the last few seasons. We know that Brentford have an ability to have it in them to knock out a higher team in a higher league. So it could be a good game, but I'm looking at the crowd numbers as well. Will the weather conditions affect? It has been a bit damp. I think it rained overnight. Brentford's right by the Thames, much like I'm right by the Thames where I live. So the pitch could be a bit heavy. There's been a fair bit of fog and light rain overnight. It has been quite damp recently. So it could be a heavy pitch. That might have an impact on how the game is played. But we'll see. We shall see. We shall see how much the weather has over the last month or so has affected the surface. It'll be interesting to see what strength of team Brendan Rodgers puts out for Leicester as well, if he puts out as many of the first team as possible. This is the only other distraction they have apart from the Premier League. I don't think they're going to catch Liverpool now. They've slipped to third, although they're comfortably third. Let's be honest. This is the competition they want to win silverware in to cement their place in the top four. I think he might put a strong lineup out. I really do. I think Leicester could put a strong lineup out to face Brentford. Brentford will put a full strength team out anyway. They want to have an upset and earn some extra cash for their coffers. The extra income is vital. Plus, they're getting a televised game as well. But there'll be no VAR at this game because it's a non-Premier League round. This is where the VAR debate comes back in, and technology, and why football and football governance is getting the use of VAR so terribly, terribly wrong. Not just in this country, but across the board. VAR is not being correctly implemented. It's not being used efficiently. Where we were at the World Cup 2 years ago, I think, was a good basis for VAR. They've taken a backward step by changing remits and adding new rules and rewriting rules that we saw at the Women's World Cup last year, which became farcical. The new penalty rule. The Premier League has said they're not going to enforce that this year. So UEFA have come out and said, and FIFA have come out and said, we want these new rules enforced with VAR, and various independent leagues are going, no, we're not. And FIFA and UEFA aren't saying to, the FA, you got to enforce this rule. And the FA have come back and said, no, we're not. So the debate about VAR and the lack of clarity and other bits and pieces, we've debated it on the channel on the video. We've discussed it. The issues with VAR are they've taken a step back massively. And where we were 2 years ago, the World Cup, I think, was a good solid basis for. There was some room for improvement, yes, but if you look at my Football World Cup videos and the reviews, the match reviews, and when I get the whiteboard out and I discuss VAR and how it had an impact on games, was the time delay, the time it took to get a decision right, and the success rate was about 90%. So you're not going to get every decision correct. No system is 100% accurate. There's always a degree of error, because there's still humans involved in the system. But I felt that there were one or two areas, the time it took to come to a decision and letting fans and players and in the ground and at home on TV know what was going on. Fully mic up the referees. You would instantly cut out the dissent from players. You would find players stop abusing the referees and officials so much. Might improve the respect level towards the officials. You have it in rugby league and rugby union. The officials are very well respected. They know if they F and blind at them, they're getting not only sent off, they're getting a suspension. This is where football needs to be tougher on dissent and abuse of officials, and it's not. So that's a byproduct that could come out of a positive change with something. So where we were in 2018 to now, massive step back. Massive. The rewording of the handball rule, the change in definition of offside, which is bizarre. There's some really bizarre decisions with VAR. And the goalkeeper penalty rule, which is not being enforced in penalty shootouts, only in regular time. That is bizarre as well. It was shown up at the Women's World Cup. They made all these experiments in the women's game. They wouldn't have dared do it in the men's game. They used the women's game to experiment with all these rule changes, and it didn't work last summer. It really didn't work. The officiating wasn't good enough anyway, but the VAR teams were exactly the same as what they'd been at the World Cup the year before, and that failed. It failed. And that was a big talking point out of the women's tournament last year, was the VAR experiments. They should have left it as it was and just increased the time it took, or speed up the time it takes, to get to a correct decision, and allow fans inside the stadium and at home know what was going on. So fully mic up the officials. FIFA decided not to do that. They decided to convolute and confuse the situation, which made the implementation of any system to get it more efficient harder. What we've seen this season is some really bizarre decisions in the Premier League and FA Cup, really bizarre. And because Brentford playing Leicester, Brentford are the home team, there's no VAR. So there's going to be decisions that should be called offside or free kicks or penalties that are not going to be today. And there will be controversy in this game. And yeah, I've got the new notepad. Oh yeah, I've got my new pucker pad. I'll be taking notes and I'll be looking at the game quite intensely, quite closely at 12:45 when the game kicks off. And yeah, I'll be putting down who plays well, who plays badly, who scores the goals, the action. But when there is a controversial decision made by an official, because there is no VAR at this game, because they're cherry picking that they can only Premier League grounds, the only grounds getting VAR, which I think is wrong. I think the FA should put money in and say, look, any league ground should have VAR now. I think every league ground should have it, but we don't. Only Premier League grounds have it. So in the FA Cup, it becomes a cherry pick about what games get it, which doesn't work. Doesn't work at all. And this is part of the problem. Is there's no universal use of it across the board. Only one referee has gone to the monitor to reverse a decision. I find that bizarre. If that is in place to be used, why is it not? Some of the decisions have been bizarre. The fans are getting more and more exasperated, and if you can't get the fans on side, the system doesn't have the support it needs to work. It's been the fans are losing faith in the system. They're your customers. If they lose faith in it, they'll lose faith in the sport. If they lose faith in the sport's on a rocky road. And football needs to figure it out. Other sports have figured out their video officials and third, TMOs or whatever you want to call them in rugby or rugby league or ice hockey or cricket, third umpire. Other sports that have a lot less money in them have figured out how to effectively use video technology and technology to assist the on-field officials with getting the calls right. Why has football taken so long? And when Sepp Blatter was in charge of FIFA, he was digging his heels in and he refused to go forward with it. It was when the corruption scandal really started to pick up pace that suddenly he was very interested in getting the tech on board to assist the officials. But it's an interesting debating point is VAR, and I'll be looking at the Leicester game intensely because there's no VAR there, and there's still TV cameras there. They could quite easily, the FA could quite easily put a VAR system in place. They choose not to. It's like they don't want the lower league team to succeed, almost. But I'm going to open this up to questions now. A lot of sporting stories are, the Australian Open. Obviously, the bushfires in Australia, the air quality has been a big cause of concern in the Australian Open and the warm-up events for the Australian Open. A lot of players were complaining about breathing issues and not feeling well, and the Australian Open organisers have been criticised for how they've handled the competition with the bushfires in Australia and the air quality not being great. So that's a debating point. Is again athlete welfare. But I'm gonna open it up to questions and see what questions you have for me, and I'll do my best to answer them. We covered a lot in the last few live streams about a variety of issues. The NFL got a lot of questions asked. The NHL, there were a lot of questions asked about that. A lot of rugby questions as well to do with the Six Nations. We've had questions on a whole variety of sports. Rugby League has got a lot of questions in there, and my thoughts on players going to certain places and players to watch for the coming season, and a whole. It's interesting, but I like answering your questions because we can have some interesting debates about a lot of things. I'm surprised no one's really asked more questions about Conor McGregor and his fight the other night, or Tyson Fury saying he's going to aim for 3 fights and then retire. So those are interesting things to talk about as well. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to ask me. I've been talking now for 40 minutes. So I'm opening up to questions. So feel free to ask away, and then we shall see what transpires. But just having a quick look at some of the fixtures in the FA Cup, and this is where I think it gets interesting, is who's playing today. I mean, we've obviously got Brentford playing at home against Leicester. Let's get on the website. Let's have a look at the... Okay, there's been a cricket delay in the final test between England and South Africa. There's a wet outfield, so they've had overnight rain. Well, what sports are we watching this weekend? I'm watching the FA Cup. I'm just I'm just trying to find QPR lost to Sheffield Wednesday 2-1 last night. Northampton Derby was a 0-0 draw, so that's a replay there. I'm just having a look at the right. So let's have a look at the FA Cup games today. So the fourth round today in the FA Cup, I'll be watching the Brentford Leicester game, and then the 3 o'clock kickoffs where we're not allowed to watch anything apparently because the media blackout. You got Burnley Norwich, Coventry Birmingham. Although Coventry, the home team, they're playing at St Andrews because the Ricoh Arena situation that they have in Coventry. Millwall playing Sheffield United. Newcastle are playing Oxford United. So that's interesting. That could be an upset. Portsmouth are playing Barnsley. Barnsley are struggling in the Championship, so that could be an upset with Portsmouth there. Reading are playing Cardiff. So that's North Championship time. Southampton are playing Spurs. That could be interesting. Both sides are underperforming. Well, I think Southampton have picked up their performances, but Tottenham are massively underperforming this season. West Ham are playing West Brom. That could be interesting. And Hull are playing Chelsea at 5:30. These are the games today. I think looking at that, I think Brentford have a good chance of upsetting Leicester. Burnley Norwich. I'm going to go for Burnley, a home win on that one. Coventry, Birmingham. It is a derby game, but Coventry, even though they're the home team, they're playing at St Andrews. That's farcical. The FA and Football League have failed Coventry as a football club massively over the years. Millwall, Sheffield United. Sheffield United are playing very, very well this season. Millwall have a good record in causing upsets in the FA Cup. That could be a replay. Newcastle, Oxford United could be a potential banana skin for Newcastle there. Could be a potential replay. Portsmouth, Barnsley, I'm going for a Portsmouth win there. Reading, Cardiff. Reading and Cardiff aren't doing the best that they could. So that could be a replay as well. Southampton, Tottenham. I'm going for a Southampton win. I think Southampton could do them at home 2-1. West Ham, West Brom. I'm going with a tie there. That could go to a replay. Hull, Chelsea. Do Chelsea, have they got quite enough? Are they going to play too many youngsters? Could Hull upset them? I'm going for a 2-1 to Chelsea there. So I think there could be some upsets today. What sports? I'll be watching the FA Cup as many of the games as I possibly. I think there's 3 or 4 games that I can watch. I think there's 2 games on tomorrow that I'll be able to watch. The NHL has got the All-Star weekend, so there's none of that this weekend. So I'll probably just watch a bit of the football. And apart from that, just enjoy my weekend, relax a little bit. Got another week at work before I'm on holiday, so I'm probably going to just try and relax a little bit and get my flat tidied up for for my holiday week. Will Coventry ever return to Coventry? That's a good question. The situation with the Ricoh and things like that, I think the whole situation since they've left Highfield Road has been a disaster. There are possible plans being put on the table to put a new stadium. I don't know is the short answer, but the FA and the Football League have, and the Premier League to a certain extent when they got relegated out of the Premier League all those years ago, there have been failures to look after, and this is where it comes to governance again. Will they ever return? I don't know. Is the short answer there? I don't know. But we saw with the old Wimbledon, now Milton Keynes Dons, they had to move. And the fans set up their own Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon. They refounded the club. So we could see a situation similar to that, where they have to move somewhere else in the Midlands and become let's say, ground share with Northampton Town. They become Northampton United or something. And the fans decide to reset up Coventry City as a football club in the non-league and battle through all the promotions. I can see that happening. But I think this is where football governance has been poor, and people fail to realise how many clubs do not own their stadiums and how many clubs actually are renting their stadiums. The amount of clubs who don't own their own home grounds is really surprisingly high. And this is where Coventry when they left Highfield Road, they didn't have a stadium, so they went, and they went to the Ricoh. And I do feel sorry for the fans, but it's also a bit of mismanagement of the club as well. The club wasn't the best run off the field, had lots of money problems. The FA and the Football League and the Premier League have also failed in their governance, and the whole situation is could have been easily avoidable, but the mismanagement by the ownership, the mismanagement by the Rico ownership as well, the fact that I think Wasps now own the Rico, and they're now the owners, it's a rugby club, and they couldn't come to an agreement because of the current ownership of Coventry City. That was another issue. So there's a whole host of issues. It's all mostly to do with money, and this is where I think sports losing the plot somewhat is the money. Is professional football is awash with cash, but the amount of clubs really all over the place is dangerously high, and the amount of teams that don't own their own stadiums and lease is something that people don't realize. I mean, West Ham is a Premier League club. Oh, look, Coventry City were a Premier League club back in the day. I remember watching them back in the day as a Premier League club. Chris Kirkland and Cole, Darren Huckabee up front, Dion Dublin, you know all that. They were a Premier League club. They have been a successful club in the past. They have won silverware, but they have been badly run for 20 years. They decided to knock down their old stadium and move. They've been badly run, admittedly, but the footballing authorities haven't got a grip on the situation. There is no transparency in governance. There's no transparency in football finances. And the amount of money floating around in the sport, this shouldn't be this shouldn't be happening anymore. But apparently it is, because costs are out of control, and the amount of clubs that do not own their stadiums is surprisingly high. Surprisingly high. And yes, they could be a big club, but unfortunately, mismanagement off the field and poor governance off the field has cost Coventry and other clubs very, very dearly. And the fact that they're the home team this weekend in the FA Cup against Birmingham City, and they're playing at Birmingham's ground, St Andrews, tells you all you need to know about the situation. It's unacceptable. We've already seen Bury go tits up this season. We've seen Bolton Wanderers on the brink. Coventry have to play their home games not in Coventry. The Football League is a joke. The FA is a joke. The Premier League is a joke. I think fans... do I like the Rico? I've never been to the Rico, but the way the finances of the stadium are a problem. The fact it's had multiple owners now is a problem. You could say it's not a rugby stadium, it is the Madejski, really, but Wasps, they're based out of there. They moved to Coventry. Fans weren't happy with that either. They've always been London Wasps. They're now Wasps, or Coventry Wasps, however you want to think of it like that. They now own the stadium. They didn't want Coventry City as tenants, which would have made them money, because of a disagreement over Coventry City's ownership, which is Sisu, I think it is, are the owners of Coventry City. And there's a whole load of issues there. But the ownership issues around the Rico have been an ongoing thing since the stadium was built. It's been nothing short of disastrous while the stadium's been in existence. It's come to the point where one of their tenants no longer plays there. It's costing them money. They're losing money if Coventry City don't play there. It's bizarre. Yeah, I know. You can't really call London Irish London club anymore because they play in Reading. Wasps now play in Coventry. Saracens are getting relegated. So yeah, Harlequins is the only London club left now. London Irish, you can't call London Irish. You could just call them the Exiles now. They play in Reading, the Badaiski. Although the club headquarters are in Richmond, though. That's why they're still called London Irish. Is their club headquarters are in Richmond, and their training ground is in Sunbury, so you could sort of class them as a London club. But it's how, since professionalism has come along, they've slowly moved further and further out of London. I suppose it probably keeps costs down. Actually, it's very expensive to rent training facilities or run facilities in London. Property costs in London for rental are obscene. So it is probably cheaper for all the clubs concerned to have training facilities or their home games played outside London for cost reasons. But yeah, it's surprising that all these London clubs, like London Wasps, now playing Coventry, London Irish now playing Reading, Saracens is getting relegated, but no one cares. Harlequins still playing at the Stoop, and I think that's a big thing for Harlequins still playing at the Stoop. I think the development on that ground, when you got Twickenham just over their shoulder as well, is they've developed the Stoop very, very well. It's a nice, solid stadium. It's a reasonable sized stadium. They've done really great things with developing it. And it is a great little facility that, you know, any lower league football club could also be pretty proud of. It's a pretty solid facility. It's a well run club. Good crowd numbers at Quins as well. But it is surprising there's only one London actual geographical London club left in the Gallagher Premiership for next season. But we'll see what happens with Saracens. We know that squad's going to have to be broken up. We'll have to find out where players go. But for anyone who says I feel sorry for the players, members of that playing squad are willingly helping break the salary cap with some of their dodgy financial dealings to hide money. Let's not feel sympathy for these people. As I say, they were knowing what they were doing. Harlequins I think they are great transport links. Nice, solid ground that they've been developing for a long time and making better year on year. The location's very, very good. As I say, you're not actually surprising that far from Heathrow with Harlequins in Twickenham. You see the ground from the railway, so it's only a short walk from the train station, which is on a main line, so there's good transport links. It's a short walk from a transport hub, as I say. It's on a bus route. And then round the corner from the Stoop, you've got Twickenham itself, the actual home of the RFU. So both stadiums are in really good locations. And the Stoop is a fine facility in its own right. And yeah, the stadium and the support is very good. They get good crowds regularly. And I see a lot of Harlequins fans around where I live at the moment, and in the area I work outside of London. A lot of Harlequins fans. So the support is more than just London based. It's around the southeast. There's some good support for Harlequins. But that is the sign of a club that did get relegated because they just weren't good enough on the field, but being very well run. They are a very well run club. They chose to stay at the Stoop in the beginning of the professional era rather than move away from their home ground, which a lot of the other clubs did. But look, we'll see what happens going forwards. We know that Saracens are now playing in the Championship from next season. We know a lot of that squad's got to move on. Where they end up is the question. And what clubs have space under the salary cap to sign these players. And how many of the players will stay in England. Lots of talking points there. You can't deny that the situation with Saracens was easily avoidable, but the players chose to get greedy as well. It wasn't just the fact they wanted to keep that squad together. Those players were getting paid top dollar anyway. They chose to be greedy. That's undermined all the good that the club has done with the academy, developing the local facilities, community outreach, all that. It's completely undermined what they've been doing for years. And it's damaged the integrity of a sport that had more integrity than football and rugby league combined. Had far more integrity, was seen as a much more respectful sport with the respect players showed each other off the field, the respect that... look, Saracens are in serious trouble. They're going to have to completely restructure as a club. They could do a London Welsh and go bust. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in, is London Welsh have had two spells in the Premiership. The first spell, they were competitive and got docked points for fielding an illegible player. Their second spell bankrupted them. So Saracens could end up like London Welsh, out of business. And this is the problem. Because, of what they've done, And there's a debate about how deliberate it was. It was pretty deliberate. And they're saying it was accidental salary cap breaches or whatever. But they chose to take relegation and have a full audit. So that tells you how guilty they were. I think, yes, you could see the Ray family completely sell off their shares. But if they're selling their shares to someone, someone's buying in. So I couldn't say they could be finished. But the direction the club takes going forward is going to be really, really interesting to see which direction the club takes. They're going to have to dismantle that squad. Whether they keep that academy going, and if they keep producing young talent, they might bounce back. But we shall see what happens. But I see rugby now starting to go the same way as football, where the top tier has all the money and the lower tiers don't. And we're seeing these kind of scandals. We'll see what happens with Saracens. We'll see what happens if Leicester also get relegated as well. There are calls to have the two sides relegated, and then you push two sides from the Championship up. But that means there's going to be two really wobbly sides in the Premiership that gets battered every weekend, and I don't know what that will do to really help the situation. But I think the club knew what it was doing. The players knew what they were doing as well. These are not thick people. These are well-educated individuals. They've got university degrees. They've got MVQs. These are really well-educated men who are also fully aware of what they were doing to aid the club in breaching the salary cap. They got greedy. These players got greedy. And yeah, they weren't cap compliant. I don't think it's worked at Medeski for London Irish. I don't think it has. And Brentford are having a new football ground built. So Brentford are not rebuilding Griffin Park. They are moving to a new stadium. And I think Brentford are a club that, with this new stadium, they need a bit of money coming in. I think if they and London Irish are actually from that area of London anyway. Originally, I can see that working. I can see that working as an agreement. I don't think it's working at Medeski for London Irish. They only fill 2 stands. I'm not sure if all fans have really bought in the Berkshire area, considering there are a few rugby clubs in Berkshire of semi-pro level at the lower levels of the game. And I don't think they're pretty happy with, London Irish being at the Medeski necessarily. So London Irish going back to West London, I think, would be beneficial for them and Brentford. We're talking about Brentford playing Leicester today at Griffin Park. They're having a new stadium built. They are going to be moving soon. So that could add impetus to the club at Brentford, going, we could be leasing out our stadium to London Irish to make some extra money, can help the club out. And yeah, I think that's a positive by London Irish to go back into West London. I think that would be a very good, shrewd move there. I think that could pay off quite well. Yeah, Newbury were, and then they did a Saracens and went bust. I've played at Newbury, not for Newbury. I played at Newbury as an away team, and they spent a lot of money on their ground and everything, and it all went a bit horribly wrong for Newbury. But there isn't the population around Newbury to support a big sporting team, really. Newbury's a very small town, and they put a lot of money into the rugby club. They were sponsored by Vodafone. And then when Vodafone withdrew the sponsorship, they sort of went slightly bust. Just slightly. The Newbury Rugby Club is still going. But again, when London Irish moved to Reading, a lot of Newbury fans decided to go down the M4 and go to the Medeski, a couple of junctions down and watch. So it didn't actually benefit local rugby in the area. Bratton Rugby Club as well, Maidenhead Rugby Club, because London Irish were down the road, instead of people paying a few quid, they got tempted by looking at Premiership rugby or Championship rugby, and they didn't necessarily support their local clubs as much. And this is the problem. At the lower levels, the fan base is limited. At the lower levels, crowd numbers are small. So, because it doesn't get the exposure, if Championship rugby was on free-to-air TV, and if the lower leagues were on free-to-air TV, you might get a bit more exposure and more people going down their local rugby club to support their local union or league, for that matter, sides. The average attendances for some of these lower league rugby union, rugby league clubs is a couple of hundred. And that's the problem. fans aren't necessarily aware that they have a local rugby club, for example. And I mean, I'm lucky that I suppose I've got Marlow up the road, got Maidenhead down the road, I've got Bracknell by where my grandparents and my mum live. So when I'm back in Bracknell, I can watch a game. I used to play for Bracknell as well for a little bit, and then in their third, fourth squad. So I am lucky that I know where the local rugby clubs are in my area. There's the Reading Abbey and there's Reading Rugby Club. So there's a fair few rugby clubs in my local area. There's also a fair football clubs as well. But the average attendances for these lower league and non-league teams are very, very low. And people, when they see a non-league football team in the FA Cup reach the third or fourth round and they see like 4,000 or 5,000 people, it's because it's on the TV. Yeah, I think I've seen the odd Welsh game on BBC iPlayer over the. You disagree, really? That's why crowd numbers aren't great and clubs are going bust. Okay, cool. You can disagree about the NRL struggling. If Cronulla Sharks are basically going bust, West Tigers having constant money problems, St George Illawarra Dragons not being the most financially stable, I think you'll find out that just because they've signed a nice 5-year deal worth $2 billion doesn't mean that money's going back into the clubs. It's going into the NRL hierarchy, much like the Football Premier League. Trust me. If the NRL is not struggling, then why are clubs barely breaking even? Look at the club finances. You can get freedom of information request. They can't hide them. Welsh Premiership is free on TV. I've seen the odd Scrum 5 on BBC iPlayer. Pity is you either have to listen to it in Welsh. So if you're one of those 5 people who can speak the language, it's great. If you're not a Welsh speaker or understand Welsh and you just want to watch club rugby, yeah, sometimes the English feed isn't available and you're stuck listening to Welsh, which, while it's a beautiful language, I don't understand. I'm not a Welsh speaker. I'm not Welsh itself. I just want to watch rugby. And if the English Championship could do the same thing, it'd be great, but you have to get the broadcasting right. And unfortunately, the RFU chasing the money. They've been chasing the money for 20 years at the detriment of the game. And they wonder why rugby union is seen as elitist. Even though half the England squad went to state school, they wonder why it's seen as elitist when the opportunities to the RFU could advertise on their website, local rugby clubs in your area. We are partnered with blah, 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 this rugby club, this rugby club. They could advertise the local rugby clubs in each county or each region, like the Southwest, the Southeast, South Central, the Midlands, the West Midlands, East Midlands. They could actually partner up more and give more exposure to those lower league clubs. And yeah, they don't. They don't. The fact that I've named off, I think, 5 local rugby clubs to where I live, how many people actually know where those rugby clubs play, where their grounds are, or the rugby club facilities? Not many. And the crowd numbers aren't great, and they do rely on membership fees to survive. They do rely on the members coming in and sitting at the bar or having the barbecues. Well, that's what I'm going to have to. It's Swindon. I'm going to have to see what rugby clubs are around Wiltshire. Wiltshire as a county is exceptionally rural anyway. Swindon is the biggest town, although Swindon's technically a separate authority. But I know Swindon has the football club and the ice hockey team. But Swindon as a town is the major population centre in Wiltshire, apart from I think Salisbury. And if you've only got 1 or 2 population centres, to have a sustainable sports team, you need to have a population centre. Really, I'm just going to have a little quick peek and see where rugby clubs around Swindon. I'm just going to have a little quick peek on the internet because this is quite interesting. I'm going to go Swindon. Rugby clubs near Swindon. Let's have a look. Okay, you have... Oh, wow. Right, so you've got Swindon Rugby Football Club, which is... And you've got the Swindon Storm, and you've got the Wootton Bassett Royal Wootton Bassett club as well. So you've got two. You've got Swindon Rugby Football Club, which is actually not too far from the Swindon Storm, which is let's have a look. Which is an American football team. So you have an American football team. You have two rugby clubs. You've got one at Wootton Bassett and one in Swindon. That's it. You've only got two. I don't know what quality or level they're playing at, but you've got two. One's not even actually in Swindon. One's down the road at Wootton Bassett, Royal Wootton Bassett. I'm not surprised with Wootton Bassett having a rugby club because of the links to the military. But Swindon as a town is a big urban area. I'm surprised they haven't got more sports clubs. I really am surprised that they don't have more. But the best bet I would say is, look on the internet. In fact, I put rugby club in. It came up with 3 results, one being an American football team straight away. I'm really surprised there weren't more. But then you look at Wiltshire in itself, and it's a very rural area, not many large towns. It still doesn't hurt going down and watching, because if they get more members and more money coming in, they can improve their facilities and then maybe set up another youth team, for example, or encourage a second 15 rather than just having one squad. They could have a second squad. This is the problem: is they're not getting the exposure, and the fact that the rugby club in Swindon is not great is a problem. But that's an issue for the facilities they're in, and they and money issues. They rely on memberships and open days where they have open days where they open up the bar to non-members. I remember last Easter I went to Reading Abbey Rugby Club for a motorcycle meet-up. There was a motorcycle event. So the rugby club needed to make money, so they opened up the club to have a motorcycle show to make money, because this is how the lower leagues work. When they're in the off season, they need to make money, although when they haven't got a game on, they need to have the charity barbecues and have the open events and open up the facilities to non-rugby things, and that's the problem. But the fact that there's only 2 rugby clubs in your local area is a problem. But at the same time, Wiltshire is not very, very urbanised. It's very, very rural. There's not as much money as people realise in Wiltshire. It's not as a wealthy county as people realise, because there's a lack of opportunity. And Swindon as itself is the biggest urban area for miles around. So I am very surprised. But again, the RFU could do more to help the grassroots clubs with their facilities. This has been mentioned many times. The RFU is the wealthiest union in the world. It's worth billions. They could do more to pump money into let's say Swindon Rugby Club or Royal Wootton Bassett, Royal Wootton Bassett Rugby Club, because they've got the Royal in their name now. They could pump more money into lower league. This is the problem, because the rugby club have got such poor facilities. That is the problem, but that's the facilities they can afford. And this is where the RFU needs to pump money in to improve the club facilities for things like Swindon Rugby Club, to make it more up to standard and more professional and more attract more investment. Let's just so speak. I'm surprised that the rugby club at Swindon is really, really poor. I mean, at least Bracknell Rugby Club has a stand and a clubhouse and 4 pitches and an old Division 1 appearance. Yes, Bracknell Rugby Club were in the 2nd tier not that long ago. And this is the issue, is the facilities at grassroots level across not just rugby, but football, cricket, they're crumbling. Yet the governing bodies are exceptionally wealthy. And yet they decide to put the highest leagues on subscription TV. There's a debate about the Six Nations rights going forward. Sky Sports trying to get their grubby hands on it. It doesn't benefit the game if the money isn't pumped back in, and this is the problem. There needs to be some kind of investment from the RFU into improving grassroots facilities at the lower level clubs. Otherwise, no one's going to want to play there. No one's going to want to send their kids to the youth level teams. No one's going to want to watch the senior teams struggle on a windy Saturday in December or November or January or February. And that's the problem. If the club facilities aren't good enough, people aren't going to want to play or want to sign up. Oh yeah, there's always big bonuses for the minute. I mean, the Scottish RFU, the chairman or the CEO got a £1 million bonus, yet they've just basically told Finn Russell, you're not welcome at training camp because if you're drinking, you're getting sacked from Scotland, basically. Gregor Townsend's under a lot of pressure. The World Cup didn't go great. The Six Nations, indifferent. They haven't made the progress required. Yet they deemed it fit enough to pay their CEO £1 million, when that £1 million could be pumped into grassroots Scottish clubs, much like the RFU paying off the Men in Blazers as well. Money could be pumped into the grassroots clubs, and it's going to the wrong places. Hence why we have a salary cap breached by Saracens. Money's going to the wrong places. It's not going to where it is actually needed to encourage growth of the game, which then you can then justify raising the salary cap. You can justify paying the players big wages when the grassroots has grown significantly enough that the quality level of the rugby being played is of a higher standard. Then you can justify paying silly money. But that's something that I think needs to be looked at is the governance and where the money goes and the sponsorship agreements. It's like Sonny Bill Williams has won the right to cover up any betting sponsorship in his Super League games because of his faith. And it's come out that football clubs are too reliant on betting sponsorship. That's something else that's been in the news. I would just quickly find this on the BBC Sport website because Sky Sports has got Sky Bet, and I don't like Sky. I'm not giving. Imagine if that £1 million was spent improving not just Scottish rugby but rugby in the borders region of both England and Scotland, where there's not a lot of jobs for people. There's not a lot of money. Where is it? Where's the football? Where's the pissing? Where's the news? Right, let me just find this news. There was. There we go. That's what I want. Football too dependent on gambling, says Sports Minister. So the government has said, okay, listen to this. The Sports Minister, Nigel Adams, says football is too dependent on gambling. Football has too much dependency on sponsorship from gambling companies, according to the Sports Minister. Nigel Adams, MP, so a Brexit supporting twat, says clubs need to look at different sources of income. His warning comes amid mounting scrutiny of the close relationship between sport and the betting industry. We're going to be reviewing the current Gambling Act, and I'm sure the link between sports, football in particular, will form a part of that. In a wide-ranging interview with the BBC Sport, the Minister also said that he met the Football League's new chairman, Rick Parry, this week to discuss ongoing financial concerns in the Football League. This is in result to Bury and going bust and Bolton on the verge and all that kind of stuff. Earlier this month, the Football Association was criticised for selling the live streaming rights to the FA Cup to betting firms via a third party. 7 gambling websites were able to show some third-round matches exclusively to anyone who placed a bet or put a deposit in their account 24 hours before kickoff. That is naughty. The deal sparked outrage at the time when the FA were campaigning for mental health, and the betting companies then offered to give up their exclusive rights. But the controversy reinforced fears that football was being used to normalise gambling among young fans via sponsorship of shirts and advertising at matches and during TV coverage. Half of all Premier League clubs have betting firms as shirt sponsors, with the figure rising to 15 in the Championship. The Football League itself is sponsored by Sky Bet, hence why I'm not on Sky News, because they're owned by the same people. Earlier this season, Huddersfield Town were fined by the FA after wearing a kit advertising a bookmaker's logo that breached regulations in a friendly. We have to look at this very carefully because the problem gambling leads to serious social problems. And in some cases, people have done drastic things and taken their lives. So we're looking at this very closely, said the Sports Minister. Occasionally, it boils over and you get incidents like you have with some clubs. You get into bother over it, like Huddersfield Town and the stunt there. There's way too much dependency, and I'm sure football authorities are aware of that. Last year, Britain's biggest gambling companies voluntarily agreed to a whistle-to-whistle television advertising ban ending commercials during live sports broadcasts. They haven't, by the way. They are still doing it. But the government is now to review gambling laws and is considering regulating the way bookmakers advertise through football. But Labour and anti-gambling campaigners have called for shirt sponsorship by betting companies to be outlawed, as in countries like Italy. Adams would not be drawn on whether a blanket ban on shirt sponsorship by bookmakers was possible. They do it in France with alcohol. They do it in Italy with gambling. Of course, they can do it. If two of the more corrupt countries in Europe can do it, I'm sure we can. The EFL has said gambling companies contribute 40 million to its clubs each year through sponsorship. In the Premier League, the figure is estimated around 70 million. They could let us in for free for the TV revenue they get. They don't need gambling sponsorship. Adams' warning comes at a time of financial turmoil in the EFL last week. Derby County became the latest club to be charged for breaching financial rules over the sale of its stadium. Yeah. A review has also been conducted into the league's governance and financial sustainability after the collapse of Bury. Yes, the EFL were made to look like mugs there earlier this season, with a number of other clubs having struggled to pay wages. Macclesfield Town. It's not a healthy picture. There aren't many football clubs in the EFL that are profitable, said Adams. I've met with the new EFL chief executive, Rick Parry, and I'm encouraged by what he said in terms of their review into broader governance. Really? Okay, because it's not transparent to us, the fans. It's not healthy to see clubs like Bury go out of the league. You have to question marks with clubs like Macclesfield. We're taking a very keen interest. The EFL told BBC Sport it has open and regular dialogue with the government and relevant stakeholders regarding football's ongoing relationship with the gambling industry. The EFL added in a statement it believes the gambling industry should make a financial contribution back into football. Well, it does apparently. You've claimed, the EFL claimed that 40 million is pumped back into the Football League by gambling firms. So I don't know why they're suddenly making it believes the gambling industry should make a financial contribution when they actually are. This is currently being achieved through commercial partnerships with the EFL and a number of our member clubs. However, it is important that such arrangements are delivered in a responsible manner. No, they're not. They're not. Just ban the ads, for fuck's sake. It's not hard. With more than 40 million a season paid by the sector to the league and its clubs, it continues to be an important part of the EFL's financial model. It's the only financial model the EFL has because the clubs are all losing money, alongside a domestic broadcasting deal, which is worth soddle 119 million a year. The clubs are saying we're being shafted, and a number of other key revenue streams, including ticketing, sponsorship, and negotiated solidarity payments through selling media rights. Then you go on about the issues around racism. Oh God, this article's long. Oh God, I thought this article was just about betting companies. Now apparently it's about everything. The sports minister also described the current issues around racism in football as absolutely shocking. Yeah. And then the World Cup bid for 2030. There's a potential bid for a World Cup 2030. And then, yeah, that's a long article. But basically, the Football League is not shining itself in glory there because it's failed multiple clubs. Macclesfield's one that's failed to pay wages. Derby County are now under scrutiny because they've sold their stadium. Football it's not just football that's reliant on betting sponsorship. Snooker is another one, another sport that's heavily reliant on betting sponsorship for events. And to say that they're not considering a shirt ban when the French ban alcohol advertising in sport, and the Italians have banned betting companies for a while because of the links to the mafia. If Italy and France can ban such adverts, I think we can. I think we can somehow. And it's not just English football, Scottish football as well is heavily reliant on alcohol and gambling sponsorship with Ladbrokes and Tenants. We have to look at the social problems this country is facing, and sport is a image of the social things that are going wrong. But football governance is poor. The fact that the sports minister is having meetings with the Football League about a variety of issues is troubling. Sport and politics should be separate, but the fact that politicians are now getting involved with the governance of the sport failing tells you not all is not well. And they're saying that, gambling firms pump money in. The TV deal is great. The TV deal isn't great. The clubs have said the TV deal sucks. The clubs hardly any clubs in the Football League are making any money. So clearly, the TV deals that we have in place that we were told would help the game all grassroots levels is a joke. So what we've been had since '92 with these TV deals is a lie, absolute lie. And I'll be looking at the Brentford Leicester game today and the crowd numbers. And if the crowd numbers are low there, it says to me that fans are just losing faith in the sport. And a sport with no fans is really a game played by hobbyists and enthusiasts. That's what it is. Oh God, look, it's not just gambling addicted fathers, women. There's ads specifically targeting women for bingo websites. So it's not just gambling addicted fathers. It's families are in poverty because a member of the family has a gambling problem. or an addiction problem. It's not just gambling. It's alcohol. It's drugs. It's all sorts. There's a whole range of reasons why families end up in poverty. But yes, I no longer go down the betting shop. Not even to bet on the Grand National anymore. I don't even play on fruit machines anymore. I haven't done for years. And I don't miss it. I have seen friends and relatives pump hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds into going down the bookies or on fruit machines. I've seen mates do it, and then when they ask me, "Oh, can I borrow a fiver? Is it going on the fruit machine?" No, it isn't it? Yeah, I'm not giving it. So can I borrow 10 quid? I've seen, yeah, the issues there. It is, well, when you've got a reliance on a certain industry, and then you've also suddenly with betting companies, and then out of in the last 20 years, the amount of betting scandals, so match fixing scandals that football has had, yet they're heavily reliant on the betting companies. It's no surprise that the Italian government and the Italian league have agreed to not allow betting firms to sponsor their clubs, considering they've had the Calciopoli scandal, the match fixing scandal of 2006. It's no surprise that the Italian authorities and the Italian league have decided to ban the adverts. Plus, organised crime and their links to legal gambling or illegal gambling is a thing. The French have banned alcohol sponsorship for nearly, I think, 30 odd years now. It's a long time. I know it's been since in the 90s. I remember in F1, the Ligier team used to be sponsored by by an alcohol firm, a brewing company. And then when they raced in France and Monaco, that suddenly disappeared off the side of their cars. So the issues with sports betting companies or gambling firms sponsoring sport, I think the only sports they've agreed that will be ring fenced would be horse racing, because the reliance of that sport and the gambling industry keeping it alive. And I think that's the only one that, and maybe the dog racing as well, greyhound racing. But in all honesty, why are professional sports leagues being sponsored by gambling firms? That's another question you have to ask: is why are professional sports leagues being sponsored by gambling firms when we know that there's an issue with problem gambling? We know that socially and in society as a whole, they're trying to change the law on gambling machines, and the gambling firms are under pressure to be more responsible, and the whole thing, the whole situation. But it is what it is. We've reached a point where we've reached this impasse, and the government is now putting pressure on gambling firms to voluntarily sign up. They are reviewing the laws. Gambling firms are on the back foot. We know there's been problem gamblers who play football. There have been players who've come out and been very open about their gambling problems. And it's a troubling thing. But no, we'll be interested to see the crowd numbers at Brentford, Leicester. I'm reading that article about clubs struggling and the EFL's, the EFL as an organisation, how it dealt with Bury going bust, how it's dealt with Bolton struggling and Macclesfield and Derby County's stadium sale. The EFL, much like Premier League rugby, the governance of sport is a massive problem. They're not transparent enough. They're giving these big bonuses out to their executives and CEOs when member clubs of that organisation are struggling financially and need, some financial assistance, some grassroots, development. Discussing Swindon Rugby Club earlier and how they don't have the facilities. Yet, if you look at Scottish Rugby Union, for example, poor World Cup, poor performances on the field, only 2 fully professional teams. The CEO outgoing gets a £1 million bonus. There's something wrong with the governance and the direction certain sports are taking, and the financial side of it. Things aren't perfect, and things need to change. And the reliance on sports betting companies, and now Sonny Bill Williams has been told he can cover up any gambling sponsors on 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 his shirt when he plays games. It tells you that when a high-profile individual in the sport is raising a concern about it, they suddenly bend over backwards to make sure they're okay. But otherwise, they don't care. There's too much money in professional sport now. I think there's not enough scrutiny, too much money, and poor governance, and and that's a bad mix of everything, really. When you have that toxic mix, it it's a matter of time before things go horribly, horribly wrong. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. I've got something bits and pieces to do. I've got to go buy some shopping, and I'm going to get ready for the Brentford Leicester game. Watch that, and then I've got some other bits and pieces to do, and then I'll do some other videos. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. Oh shit.